Mexican records got the lights down low. Soul disco where the groovy people go. Hit play, let the music flow. Old school beats with a modern glow. Oh.
Hello everybody and a very warm welcome back to the latest episode of Hidden Jewels of Soul and Disco. I do hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. In this week's episode I'm featuring the one and only Etta Jones. If I mention the name Etta Jones today, some of you will probably think of Etta James first. That is understandable because the names are similar and both were extraordinary singers. But there were two completely different artists. While Etta James is now regarded as one of the great icons of American music history, Etta Jones has remained surprisingly little known outside the jazz world, even though her career began in the mid-1940s and continued almost until her death in 2001. That is exactly why she fits so well into Hidden Jewels of Soul and Disco. Her story becomes especially interesting for us in the mid-1970s when she recorded an album for Westbound Records that brought together jazz, blues, rhythm and blues and soul in a fascinating way. But to understand why that record works so well, we need to go back much further. Etta Jones was born on November the 25th in 1928 in Aiken, South Carolina, and grew up in New York. Music seems to have been part of her life from a very early age, and she later recalled that the desire to sing had essentially been there since childhood.
Think all my life. When I was a little girl, they told me when I was 3 years old, I was singing everything from the radio. And I'd go in front of the mirror and just move my hands. And when I saw Billie Holiday, that cinched it. She was my biggest. I loved her.
As a teenager, Etta Jones entered a talent contest. She did not win, but pianist and bandleader Buddy Johnson discovered her there and hired the roughly 15-year-old singer. So one of the most important moments in her career actually came from a competition she had lost. Buddy Johnson belonged to a generation of American band leaders for whom jazz, rhythm and blues, and popular dance music still existed naturally side by side, which gave the young Etta Jones an excellent musical education. Her first recordings were made as early as 1944. Critic and producer Leonard Feather organized a session that included musicians such as Barney Bigard and Georgie Auld. And titles like Salty Papa Blues, Evil Gal Blues, and Blow Top Blues already show how deeply rooted her musical background was in blues. From 1949 to 1952, Etta Jones worked with Earl Father Hines, one of the most important pianists in jazz history. You might assume that a singer who had already made professional recordings as a teenager and spent several years working with someone like Hines would have had no trouble in establishing a solo career afterwards. But the reality was very different. After leaving Hines, she sometimes struggled to find enough engagements to make a living from music alone. She worked as a seamstress, as an elevator operator, and at the time, even earned money packing records. I find that detail particularly striking. A singer who would later have major record success was for a while packing other people's records, which shows just how unpredictable a career in music can be. In 1956, her first album, The Jones Girl, Etta Sings, 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 was released, but the breakthrough she had hoped for did not come yet. It was only several years later that a demo tape reached Prestige Records. At the time, Prestige was one of the most important independent jazz labels in the United States, with artists such as Miles Davis, John Coltrane, and Sonny Rollin in its catalog. At the same time, the label was also open to blues, rhythm and blues, and what would later be known as soul jazz, which made it a natural home for Etta Jones. On June the 21st in 1960, she entered Rudy Mangelda's studio in Englewood Cliffs with musicians including Frank West, Richard Wynards, and Roy Hines. Those recordings became Don't Go to Stranger. The title track was a major breakthrough and reached number 5 on the American R&B chart and number 36 on the pop chart. For such an understated vocal jazz recording, that was a remarkable crossover success. When you listen to that song today, what stands out most is how little it sounds like a calculated hit.
I've been through it all.
Etta Jones sings almost as if she were speaking directly to one person. The environment gives her plenty of space, and she uses that space through changes in phrasing and carefully placed pauses. The album also included songs such as Fine and Mellow, Bye Bye Blackbird, and All the Way. And Prestige continued to record her in a variety of settings, from small groups to large arrangements. The enormous success of Don't Go to Strangers also had a downside, because everything that follows was automatically compared with that one song. She continued to make strong records, but she never achieved quite the same commercial success again. By the mid-1960s, her recording actively slowed down, although she continued to perform and tour. In 1970, for example, she traveled to Japan with Art Blakey. In 1968 would prove even more important for the next phase of her career. In Washington, Etta Jones was paired with tenor saxophonist Houston Person, and that engagement developed into a musical partnership that would last for more than 3 decades. Person had a warm, bluesy, and highly lyrical tone that suited her voice just perfectly. And apparently, the connection worked just as well on a personal level.
You know, because a lot of times, well, they say, it never happened to me. Singers and musicians they say, don't get along too well. But we got along famous, and the musicians helped me through my whole career, so.
On their recordings, you can hear very clearly why the partnership lasted for so long. Person reacts to her voice rather than simply accompanying it. And over the years, he also became an important producer of many of her later recordings. Then, in 1975, Etta James appeared on a label that should immediately catch the attention of soul and funk collectors. Westbound Records, the Detroit label, is best known for funkadelic, but its catalog also included a wide range of soul, funk, and rhythm and blues. So seeing Etta Jones on Westbound is interesting in itself. The album was simply titled Etta Jones 75. The original American pressing appeared as Westbound W203 and was distributed to 20th Century. If you know Don't Go to Stranger, I would highly recommend listening to these 2 records back to back, because the 15 years between them are immediately audible. The intimate early 60s Prestige sound has been replaced with a fuller mid-70s production. But Etta Jones herself remains instantly recognizable. Houston Person is there on tenor saxophone, Cedar Walton appears on piano, and some of the arrangements use strings. What makes the album particularly interesting, though, is the choice of material. Etta Jones opens with Bill Withers' Grandma's Hands. And she also records I Just Don't Want to Be Lonely by Vivian Barrett, Bobby Elliott and John Freeman, as well as I Think I'd Tell Him by Tom Bell and Linda Creed. That combination is what makes the record work for me. It is neither a conventional vocal jazz album nor an attempt to turn Etta Jones into a fashionable soul singer. Instead, she brings decades of experience in jazz, blues, and rhythm and blues into material that belongs very clearly to 1970s. There's another reason why I think this is such an interesting record for vinyl lovers. An original 1975 US pressing is still surprisingly affordable. Depending on the condition and seller, copies can often be found for roughly 15 to 25 euros or dollars. So this is one of those rare cases where the word original 70s pressing do not automatically mean spending a fortune. For me, that makes Etta Jones 75 a genuinely hidden jewel, relatively obscure, musical, fascinating, and still accessible if you actually want an original copy. The lyrics were especially important to Etta Jones, and she explained very clearly what she looked for in a song.
Look at the lyrics, see if they make sense. I hate to do a song and it doesn't make sense at all. I like a story. I like to tell the story, and I like to make you understand what I'm saying. If it's sad, I want to make it sound sad. If it's happy, I want it, and it's lyrics. And, of course, melody, too.
Her version of Grandma's Hands is a perfect example. Bill Withers wrote the song about his grandmother, so it's themes of family, religion, comfort, memory, and loss, and give Etta Jones exactly the kind of story she could work with. She does not try to imitate Withers. Through her voice and her own life experience, she gives the song a different perspective. She also had no interest in reproducing her own recordings exactly.
Well, I never sing it the same way again. I can't even sing along with my own records.
That short statement tells us a great deal about her approach. For Etta Jones, a studio recording captured one particular moment rather than an established definitive version of a song. The next time she performed it, the phrasing, pauses, or melodic detail could change. After the Westbound album, another highly productive period of her career began. From the mid-1970s onward, she recorded extensively for Muse Records, often again with Houston Person. One of the important albums from this period was Save Your Love for Me, which earned her a Grammy nomination in the early 1980s. Rather than going through her entire catalogue, what matters here is that her career did not simply fade after the success of Don't Go to Strangers. She continued recording, performing, and developing as an artist for decades. In the 1990s, she moved to High Note Records and continued to make new music. One particular meaningful album came in 1997 with My Buddy. Etta Jones sings the songs of Buddy Johnson. That brings the story full circle in a remarkable way. Buddy Johnson had been the man who hired her as a teenager and helped set her professional career in motion. More than 50 years later, she devoted an entire album to his songs, and that record earned her another Grammy nomination. Her final album returned to another figure from the beginning of her story. Etta Jones sings Lady Day. It was dedicated to, of course, Billie Holiday, and a singer she had described as her greatest influence. By that time, Etta Jones was seriously ill with cancer, but she continued working and was still performing only a few weeks before her death. She died on October the 16th in 2001 in Mount Vernon, New York, at the age of 72. Etta Jones Sings Lady Day was released on the very same day and later received another Grammy nomination. Looking at her career from the outside, it would be easy to turn it into a story of a great singer who should have been much more famous. From our perspective of today, that may even be true, but Etta Jones herself seems to have defined success rather differently.
All I want to do is work, make a decent salary, and sing and have friends. What's so good about this singing business and traveling business is I have friends, friends all over the world.
I think that statement offers a beautiful way of looking at her career. Etta Jones is not describing a life measured by chart positions of fame. She is describing a career that allowed her to sing, travel, and work with outstanding musicians and meeting people all over the world for decades. Perhaps that was her own definition of success. If you don't not know Etta Jones at all, I would recommend beginning with two very different albums. Start with Don't Go to Strangers from 1960 and then listen to Etta Jones 75. Together, those two records show just how adaptable Etta Jones was without ever losing her own musical identity. And that is exactly why I wanted to feature her in this series. She was not a second Billie Holiday. And of course, she was not Etta James either. She had her own musical language. And once you explore her music a little more deeply, it becomes obvious that Don't Go to Strangers was only the most famous part of a much larger story. For me, that makes Etta Jones exactly the kind of artist Hidden Jewels of Soul and Disco is about. Someone whose name may not immediately mean something to everyone, but whose music gives us more than enough reason to rediscover her today. And if you liked that episode, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.